our lovely Lizzie. Lizzie Enders. Lizzie Enders, is this a truth, lie, or shenanigan?
It's shenanigans. I mean, again, I always get the double-edged sword
You
here.
do.
Um, it has some truth in it. There's definitely some historical truth, some factual truth, but um, in my opinion, it's shenanigans. So back in July, the New York Times posted this article talking about how historically, during previous pandemics in this country, um, the education system decided that they were going to use alternative methods for school. And one of those methods was to have classrooms outdoors. During the flu pandemic, during the tuberculosis pandemic, they had classes outdoors. And so some of those classes, I think this is one of them actually. A lot of the classes in New York were on the ferries. A
Mm.
lot of them were in parks. A lot of them were just around the city at a time where it wasn't as developed as it is now. And so the whole premise of this article is doing a flashback to that time period and looking how various cities throughout the country engaged in outdoor instruction, and posing the question, should we do it now? Can we do it now? Is that a thing that we should be taking into consideration? And so before I give my entire diatribe as an educator, I want to pose the question to the panel, especially, Rob, who lives in a country that I think in certain aspects values open space more than we do a little bit here in the United States. But overall, what do you guys think? Do you think this is a viable option in the United States, particularly during a pandemic when Betsy DeVos
Oh God.
was the head of education in the United States?
Oh
Who
God.
wants to go first?
So why don't we start with Gianni Storm, the student?
Mm,
I would I'm conflicted a little bit because I feel like on one end it's like, well, what's the difference? Like you're still congregating. I don't understand. Like you can still get the
Catch it.
virus.
You can still catch it.
And then on the other end, but at the same time, I know that students actually do really well with like learning outside. I remember like back in the day, sometimes in grade school, we would be able to go outside and it somehow just rejuvenated your will to learn or something like that. But yeah, so I'm kind of biased. I mean, conflicted. I don't really know. I don't think it's me personally. I don't think it's like the best idea
Okay.
because I think that it's still unsafe and it still doesn't make sense. But I think that it sounds like a good idea. I mean, it could work. I feel like we should try it like with certain groups of like certain ages of students and see how it works. But yeah.
All right. So since you wanted to hear from Rob B, I'll jump in, and then we'll have Rob B go just before you. So I gotta say, at first I was like, hell yeah, this is perfect. I don't care. The kids can go out in the cold. They've been taught in the cold in the past. I remember when I was in school, we it was freezing in our schools, and it was hot. We didn't have air conditioning. I mean, when we were at Wilson together, we didn't have air conditioning. In fact, that's how I won student government president because I promised air conditioning.
I don't even remember that.
I know,
But
right?
do you remember when we were in end of 10th grade, all of 11th grade, when Wilson was being renovated and
Hmm.
we had classes in the
Yes, I
hallways,
do remember that.
and how ineffective that was? But continue. Continue.
Ineffective. I'm just saying, but that was my first thought. We have modern conveniences. It doesn't mean we risk people's lives in exchange for those convenience. Plus, some of those modern conveniences can make outdoor easier, better. I mean, it won't be freezing because you can have heaters outdoors. But then I realized, and I thought about it some more because I knew this was coming up. Back in the day, virtual learning was not a possibility, right? You know, but being that this is a temporary pandemic, I mean, not that it's going to magically disappear, but it's not going to
We
always be a
hope.
pandemic. There's absolutely nothing wrong with learning virtually for the time being. I mean, and virtual learning It's relatively effective. It's not as effective as in-person learning. We all know that. But I mean, comparing it to, and you're sort of right about being in the hallways and all that stuff, how ineffective that was. It was hard to concentrate and pay attention. But I think virtual learning is just fine. I don't see why they have to be forced to be outside. Sorry, Robbie.
All right. Yes, there's definitely value in outdoor education. There's absolutely value in outdoor education because you can tailor the lesson to the setting. You can pull from real world examples and make it really relevant. To touch on Johnny's point as far as not seeing the difference because they're still congregating, if you take a school that has say 20 classrooms, and for one day we can pull 5 of those classrooms out for outdoor learning. We then remove them from general population. We put them in their own little isolated settings for the day, the week, whatever the time period is, and you've liberated space within the school infrastructure so you can then follow more safe social distancing rules. Then, if we throw in the virtual learning for those who don't want to opt for the in person, and this is something you could facilitate with the outdoor learning also, so that it can be delivered virtually to someone who doesn't want to be in groups. I think that you've got a really healthy mix at that point. You're keeping people safely away, and you're not really removing from the learning experience. And like again, so many times where I remember as a kid just going out into the schoolyard and to have things, the real world made relatable to the lessons that I was learning. Even as a university student, when I was at the School of Education, um, a lot of the stuff that we were doing, we would just hike out into the conservation area behind the university, and it was a wonderful experience in that respect. So I think that there's value in doing it from the education perspective and from the health and social distancing perspective.
All right, Lizzie.
I think these are all valid points. I think the one thing that set me off about this topic when this article came out again, because it first came out in July and then it was updated and reposted on the New York Times website last week. So the conversation started up again and it kind of went viral. And I got into several exchanges with people um, throughout the week about this topic. But one thing that bothered me about it is that with ideas like this, everyone thinks that it's an easy solution. It's something that can happen overnight. And people were talking about we should do this in DC. We should do this. I think it would be a viable option. And my first response was, where are we going to do this in Washington, DC? Where are we going to have the outside space to do this for Washington, D.C. currently? I mean, I'm not talking about the universities. I'm just talking about
It's
public
tough in
schools.
major cities.
Just, but just in Washington, D.C. Well, Washington, D.C. is a major city. I mean, it's the
That's
nation's
what I'm saying.
capital.
I agree. It's
Yeah,
tough in major cities. Yep.
it's not the major cities. But I think people, again, want to apply this model to every city without thinking about the planning that goes involved. In Washington, D.C. alone, there are about, I think at the start of the end of last school year, so at the end of at the end of June, there were 52,000 students enrolled in public schools in Washington, D.C. throughout the city. And that's pre-K through 12th grade. Again, where are we going to put these students? A lot of these students, people are talking about how they're having problems in virtual learning. A lot of these students were having problems in school before virtual learning. They were
Yeah.
having problems in school inside a physical classroom pre-pandemic.
Hmm.
In addition to that, you have to take into consideration all of the elements that hinder a successful classroom outside. You have weather, you have people walking down the street twerking, trying to interrupt your classroom, your kitchen. You, you have police sirens. So I can never, when I'm teaching on Zoom throughout the week, I can never have my windows open because of the sirens or the outside noise, because it hinders, it pauses the classroom. So you have cars running by, you have sirens, you have weather, you have potential crime. You have people walking down the street who might not respect your classroom, who may, yell out, who may taunt your students. Neo, your wife posted a picture. So Neo's wife owns a gym,
Yep.
Posh Fitness in College Park, Maryland. Whoop, whoop,
Posh,
whoop.
posh.fit.
So she posted a picture because we had some heavy rains this week.
We did.
And she posted a picture. She had a tent for what I assume was some type of outside gym class or something. And she posted a picture of the tent that got knocked down during a windstorm.
Yeah.
Now imagine if little kids are in that. In addition to precipitation with weather, you're talking rain, you're talking snow, you're also talking allergies.
Yep.
I am extremely allergic
Yep.
to the outside.
Yep.
And so it would take a lot of planning. This is not an easy thing
Right.
that we could jump into. I could see it happening in cities because the picture that I actually posted, when I posted this story or the promo for this segment online, that was from a picture of a classroom in St. Louis. So several schools in St. Louis started outside instruction in September, but not the entire St. Louis public school system. These were very small, most of them private schools. So they're funded not with city funds, but also with private funds, and they have smaller classrooms. The average size of a DC public school classroom is upwards of 25 students. Where are you going to put them? So in theory, it makes a lot of sense. It's a grand idea, but it takes a lot of planning, and I don't think it's something that would work effectively for Washington, D.C. I think it might work more perfectly in warmer climates.
All right.
In states like California,
Sure.
not Florida, because Florida has a lot of hurricanes, and the hurricane season, is long. Plus, Florida is a little crazy, and we don't want the kids outside. But also think about security. It also ups the level of security that you have to have because it's not a controlled environment. You got kids wandering off here and there. So there are a lot of things that go into this topic. And so in all of my arguing and fussing with people all week, I just wanted to let them know that this isn't an easy fix.
No.
And you also have to ask the teachers, do I want to go outside and teach? Hell no. I do not.
All right, let's get to some of these comments online. Let's get to some of these comments online. All right, so Kevin Thaxton said, which one was the hottest parts of the school?
I would say the third floor, heat rises.
That's true.
And down by the pool, and that exhaust down by the pool. Yeah.
My cousin, Jeanette Brown says, my cousin's kids in Central Florida are in school outside. Wonder if Southern Cal does have the same. I have thought of relocating for winter there. I bet. Did you see something, Gianni?
Yeah, Mike Winter said, in fact, the CDC is currently focusing on using Duke's pandemic response experience as a model. I can only assume that there was a combination of all of this going on at Duke now, Duke University he's speaking about.
Jacqueline Robinson says, Florida also has that idiot Governor DeSantis. All right, so we're definitely out of time. So